Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're taking a look at a topic that touches almost every single part of our society, non-belief. We're going to completely put aside the usual debates and look strictly at the neuroscience, the history, and the actual real-world impacts of secular humanism. We'll be diving into everything from how higher-order brain networks process information entirely differently, all the way to how atheism has literally been utilized as a tool for social equality. By sticking to the research, the historical record, and the hard data, we're going to make this massive, fascinating topic completely accessible. Let's get right into it. Okay, so here is our roadmap for today. First, we're defining secular humanism. Second, brains, education, and belief. Third, a history of free thought. Fourth, pariah and social equality. And finally, coexistence in modern society. Starting with Section 1, defining secular humanism. Let's demystify the core concepts. So before we look at the science, we really need to establish a neutral baseline. Secular humanism basically strips away the stigma that's often thrown at the word atheism. It's an ideological stance defined by the absence of belief in deities, sure, but it actively prioritizes reason, logic, and empirical evidence to understand the world around us. It relies heavily on observable reality rather than supernaturalism, mysticism, or dogma to guide moral decision-making. Now, if we look at documents like the Amsterdam Declaration, the ethical framework is actually quite structured. It champions the scientific method and explicitly rejects religious dogma. Instead, it places the full responsibility for ethical decisions squarely on human shoulders. Meaning it's entirely up to us, right here and right now, to search for justice and fairness without relying on ancient texts. It focuses heavily on fulfillment, personal growth, and creativity in this life. Moving on to Section 2. Brains, education, and belief. We're looking at the cognitive science behind our worldviews. This is where things get really fascinating. When we look at worldviews on a microscopic, cognitive level, we find staggering statistics like this. 93%. That is the number of current members of the prestigious National Academy of Sciences who do not believe in God. 93%. So you have to ask, why is that? What is the actual correlation between cognitive performance, education, and a shift away from religious belief? Well, researchers have been working hard to unscramble this. A recent fMRI study actually tracked brain activation and found some very distinct differences. Believers tend to rely on what's called bottom-up processing. These are older brain systems tailored for intuitive emotional reasoning. Non-believers, on the other hand, actively use top-down processing, relying on higher cortical areas for more analytical reasoning. Now, it's not about which one is quote-unquote better, it's about recognizing that our brains literally process the exact same visual or sensory information through fundamentally different cognitive pathways. But you might be wondering, is this cognitive shift driven by the education itself, or is it just about wealth? Like, meaning wealthier people can afford better schools and just happen to be less religious? Well, recent studies looked at DNA-based predictors within families to filter out things like income or class entirely, and what they found was that higher education itself actively reduces the probability of holding fundamentalist beliefs. Education actually mediates this cognitive shift, completely independent of socioeconomic factors. It's a real game changer. All right, Section 3, a history of free thought, from ancient philosophies to U.S. courtrooms. So how exactly did we go from isolated ancient philosophers to a massive global movement? The formalization of free thought has really accelerated recently. Back in 1851, George Holyoake coined the term secularism to describe a focus purely on this life. By the 1870s, the ethical movement sprouted up in the US and the UK. Then, in 1933, the first Humanist Manifesto was published, pulling together a unified, non-religious identity. And by 1961, we hit a major milestone in the U.S. legal system with Torcaso versus Watkins. But 1961 case actually caused massive legal ripples because a specific footnote categorized secular humanism as a non-theistic religion. Opponents jumped right on this, arguing that teaching evolution violated the separation of church and state. But the courts clarified this over the following decades. In cases like Pelosa and Smith, courts consistently ruled that objective textbooks and secular ethics are perfectly neutral. They are not some kind of anti-religious religion. Section 4. Pariah and social equality. Let's look at atheism as a tool for justice in India. We've looked a bit at Western legal battles, but let's shift our geographic focus for a minute. A really fascinating study published in the International Journal of Law, Management, and Humanities investigates the historical legacy of a leader in Tamil Nadu, India, known as Periyar, and the public perception of atheism in that region. You see, Periyar didn't just hold atheism as some personal philosophical stance, he wielded it as a societal weapon. To fight massive caste-based discrimination, he impartially observed that religious superstitions were functioning as literal tools of oppression. To him, removing religious orthodoxy wasn't about attacking individuals. It was absolutely crucial to remove the structural roadblocks that were actively hindering human equality. It's a really striking example of secular ethics put into real-world action. And finally, Section 5, Coexistence in Modern Society. Where do we go from here? So we have differing cognitive processing networks, and we have deep historical divisions. Can these worldviews actually share the same space? Well, the data says overwhelmingly, yes. The academic study conducted around Chennai found that whether respondents lived in rural villages or urban centers, there was a widespread public consensus that atheism and religion can and do coexist harmoniously in society. As the researchers explicitly noted in the study, atheism coexists harmoniously with various religious beliefs in India. And this proves a crucial point for all of us. You don't need to process the world the exact same way to participate in a shared ethical community. Mutual respect absolutely spans across these different philosophies. Which brings us to the ultimate question. Does the future of human morality rely on our ancient traditions or on our evolving top-down cognitive reasoning? Or, as the data strongly suggests, is the future a nuanced balance of both? It's a reality we're all going to have to navigate as we continue to map the human mind and our shared history. Thanks for joining me on The Explainer, and keep questioning everything.